What's up guys, and welcome back to Tech Plant. Today I'm going to show you how I built this auto mister for all my orchids, so let's check it out. Okay, so to start this project we're going to need to procure our first material, and that is this egg crate light diffusion sheets or panels. You can get these at most hardware stores and they come in 2-foot by 4-foot sections. Once you've determined the sizes that you want your panels, you can begin cutting this stuff with simple wire cutters. All you do is just snip down the line and you can separate this stuff quite easily. Before you start doing that though, I do highly suggest, for this project at least, that you trim the outer layer because it's much thinner than the inner ones, and we're actually going to be hanging it by the edge, and so you don't want to use that thinner plastic because there's a chance it would break with all the weight of the plants. Once you finish this, you should have 3 panels, with the 1 back panel and the 2 side panels. Again, they can be whatever size you want. This project is completely scalable. Once you've got your panels though, now we need to create like the skeletal structure to support these panels that we're going to hang our plants on. I decided to use 1/2-inch PVC pipe and fittings just because it's a lot easier to build stuff out of than using like wood or other things. And I like that it's plastic so that way water can't affect it. For my structure, I'm just going to make a basic cube, and I'm going to use 8 of the corner fittings, and then I'm going to use 4 of the T fittings just to add some structure up top to hang some of the irrigation from. You'll see how that works later. To get started on the structure, I'm going to start with the top, and I'm just going to lay my pipe across the back of the back panel and kind of lay out my fittings to see what I want. I'm leaving about 2 inches extra on either end to give myself some room. Also remember that the PVC goes inside the fittings, so take that into account for your measurement. Because we're mirroring everything we're doing on the back top of the structure to the front top, it's best to tape 2 PVC poles together in multiple spots, so when you make all your cuts for the fittings, you'll have the exact lengths for the other side as well. For this entire build, I'm just dry fitting everything together, and I'm not using the PVC glue. I don't want this to be permanent, so I'm just kind of sticking it in there, and the friction alone is holding it up. So now you can just dry fit your pieces together. Once you've got your back portion assembled, then you can go ahead and assemble the front portion, and it should be exactly the same because you tape the poles together when you cut them, so you don't have to worry about any discrepancies in length. Now we need to link the front and back together with the cross beams, so you're going to cut 4 for the top and 2 for the bottom one, which we'll work on later. You might as well cut them all at the same time just so they're consistent. To determine the length you're going to use, you're going to have to look at your side panels and how far they stick out, then add about 6 inches because that'll make it a lot easier to contain the water. Once you've got it all dry fitted together, this is what the top portion should look like. I did flip it upside down because now we're going to go and cut the height. The height is very important. You got to make sure you're at least a foot more than the total height of your back panel because we're going to put a reservoir to catch all the water underneath this, and so it's got to sit below the panels if everything's going to work correctly. Again, you'll see what I mean later. Now that you have the legs or the height cut and connected, we're going to have to finish up the bottom. You already have your cross beams cut from earlier, but we do have to cut the ones that go lengthwise. So you're going to measure the top and see how long it is, but make sure you take into account the portion that goes inside the PVC fittings so you get an accurate measurement and you don't cut it too short or too long. Normally when you build things with PVC, you use a special like primer and glue to kind of insert the things in the fittings, and it will be a permanent fixated thing. But I hate that because then I can't take it apart or adjust it later. So to make this more permanent yet still flexible, I'm just going to drill holes through the fitting and the pipe, then insert some zip ties through there to keep it nice and snug and keep it from falling out. But if I ever need to change any parts out, I can just snip the zip tie and it will come right out. You don't have to worry about these tiny holes bothering the structural integrity, and you can reuse these parts in any build in the future. Next, I needed a way to actually adhere the plastic inside the frame so that way I can control where the water goes. Now I thought about using tape or glue, but all those things become messy and very permanent. I was kind of playing around with this pipe and I realized it fit right in these water bottles perfectly, so I decided I'm going to make some clips out of this, that way I can sort of recycle some plastic. So in order to do that, all you do is cut off all the excess plastic from like the lip, I guess, of this water bottle, and then you're going to take that same wire cutters you used earlier and you're going to clip about 1/4 of the total ring out of the ring to make kind of a C shape. Once you've done that, the edges actually become quite sharp, so just take a lighter or some sort of heat source, maybe a candle, and just apply light heat to those edges, and it should cause them to melt slightly and round them enough where they're not sharp. Now that we've made all our clips, now we actually have to hang up the plastic. I bought this from the hardware store. It's like 25 feet by 10 feet, and it works pretty well for projects. To start off, I just used some masking tape just to get the rough like hangage, and then from there we'll use the clips. Make sure you cut your plastic long enough to wrap around the entire structure just so we can guarantee water can't leak out later. You'll see what I mean. When hanging up the plastic, I made sure to leave a few inches up and above what I would call the top, just to make sure I can keep water from shooting over the edge. I used a piece of paper with the clips in order to guarantee I don't actually break through the plastic. All you got to do is kind of fold the paper around the plastic and pull, put the little clip over the paper, and then slide the paper out from underneath. This will guarantee that even if you had some sharp points, it's not going to cut through your plastic. I ended up putting most of my clips near the corners and more towards the top, because the bottom, the weight of the actual grates will kind of keep it where it needs to be. Once you've got all the clips in and you kind of have your like front doors to the plastic, we're actually going to install the grates. Now you're going to need a pointy metal thing that you can poke through the plastic, and you're going to make sure you put the holes right along the top of the pipes. We don't want any water to leak out. Once you've got the holes poked, you can put some zip ties through the holes and around the main pipe, and you're going to use those to hang up the grate. Make sure you hang up the grates with a lot of zip ties. I think I used a total of 6 just to distribute all the weight, because as you add plants and you get them wet, it's going to be quite heavy. Don't cinch down the zip ties right away. Get all of them through first, and then use some form of measurement just to pull them all to the same tightness. That way the weight is evenly distributed across all 6. You can use the same method for the side panels. Depending on the size, again, you can just choose how many zip ties you think will give you the most like even distribution of weight. Don't be shy with the amount of zip ties you use, because you do not want to wake up one day and see all your plants like in the pool of water all damaged because it fell down. Now that all our structure is complete, you can kind of see it taking shape, and now we actually have to add the irrigation. I use a lot of like sprinkler stuff that I got at the hardware store, and just a random pump and tubing. One of the first things I do is I took the little L bracket that hooks up to the manifold and I jammed it in my tubing, but I realized it's a little too small, so try and get the right sizes for your setup. But anyways, to connect it to the manifold, you're going to want to use some of like the plumber's tape or whatever, just to make sure it doesn't leak. So just wrap a few layers and then screw on your manifold. Once you got your pipe hooked up to the manifold, then you can go and run that along the back side, outside of the plastic, and up over the top. I added some leftover grate on the top just to give me some anchor points for certain things, so you can do the same. Once you get the main water source hung up, now you can start adding little hoses and water distributors or misters to your manifold. I'm choosing 2 different styles. One is like a 90 degrees, and then the other one is just like a sprayer. I'm going to put a total of 4, leaving myself with a spot for 2 more. Once you hooked everything up, it should kind of look like some weird gangly octopus, but that's how you know you did it right. Then I kind of secured the main pipe to the top, but I did leave all the smaller misters loose because I have to figure out how they spray in a test run just to decide how to actually hook them up. So let's move this into its permanent location. Once you've got the structure where you want it to be, now you're going to get your tote or tub that you're going to keep the water in, and you're just going to put it underneath in the center and try and feed all of the plastic sheeting down into that tub. I ended up having quite a bit of extra plastic, so I did cut some off at the bottom just so the container wasn't just full of it. But you want enough plastic where it's not going to slip out, so I put a bunch of rocks and other heavy things that won't like rust on top of the plastic, because if it slips out of the tub, you could like feed water into the rest of your house. Then the last part to get the water to actually flow is hook up an electric pump, other end of your hose, and to add a whole bunch of water. That way we can kind of test this out and see how it flows. I zip tied the 4 outputs just kind of how I think it would work before testing it out, just to get an idea, and obviously you can see it's actually working quite well, and it looks like it's going to distribute the water pretty evenly. So now I'm going to put all my plants in there and kind of test it out for sure. For me, I'm mostly going to use this for orchids, but you could use this for air plants or other plants that grow up inside trees and don't use like dirt or soil. As you can see, this thing turned out pretty dang awesome. It looks like some sort of like lab equipment or some science experiment, but there's tons of space now and I can put a ton of orchids in here. This is probably the worst thing for me to do, because now I'm going to be shelling out more money on more plants because I have more room. Eventually I'm going to get a house and I'm going to build a way more robust, better version of this, but for now this will do. If you're also building this too, you can just plug that pump into a timer and have this thing fire up for like a minute or 2 every day, and you can just kind of set it and forget it. Just look every few days to make sure you got enough water in the reservoir. Alright guys, that pretty much sums up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. This thing has been an absolute lifesaver. All I do is plug the thing in, and once I throw it on a timer, I don't have to do anything, and it waters all my orchids for me. I kind of want to scale this up and eventually get everything auto watering, because it would just make my life so much easier. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this gives you an idea of how you can kind of construct something like this yourself. And you know, even if this wasn't for orchids, you can make something like this for your plants if you were to go on vacation. I guess it's a little overkill, but whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, may your plants grow strong and healthy. I'll see you next time.